Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to my Next Best Games. This is where I'm going through my top next 100. Where me, Z, and Sam are doing our top 100 games of all time. But these games are so fantastic that I still wanted to talk to you about them. Today we're going through number 160 to number 141. So let's jump right into these great games. Number 160 has been on my list ever since it's come out, and that is Lost Valley. Lost Valley is a great role-playing game is probably not the correct word, but it has that feel to it. You're a miner, 49er. As you go out and you're trying to find gold, and you're doing it by looking for river gold or mountain gold, and you move your guy around, and you get equipment. You buy canoes. You go and set traps to catch fish so you can eat. And there's all sorts of cool things that you can do, but you do one short action in your turn, and it just spins around and around and around until someone wins. Really great game about mining gold. Then we have 159. This is a new one to the list. That's Jump Drive. Now, Race for the Galaxy and Roll for the Galaxy are my top 100. I really like those. But Jump Drive, which is a simplified short version of Race for the Galaxy, surprised me at how much fun it was. You're simply just taking cards. It's like a really, really condensed short version of Race. And I thought, that's too simple for me. But it actually turned out to be quite fun, really fast to play. It's one of those games you play, you're like, all right, let's set up the cards and do it again. Then we are at 158, which is the Warlord CCG. Now, this may be one of my guilty pleasures because very few people talk about this game, but the Warlord collectible card game, of which you can probably buy a lot of it now these days, was kind of like Dungeons and Dragons collectible card game because it used the D20 system, and you have a leader and a bunch of guys in front of that leader trying to protect him, and you're attacking each other by rolling dice with special cards. Really cool concept for the game. I really liked it. I mean, it's a little clunky in areas, but man, it just feels so different. And it really is a game, I think, that has a lot of inspiration for games like Summoner Wars and other, Magician versus Magician or whatever. This game, you leader versus leader, it had a good army feel to it with a strong fantasy flavor. 157 is Thunder Alley. Another game, a racing game. Last time I mentioned Reifenbright. Thunder Alley is like the serious version of that. It's NASCAR. It's not called NASCAR, but it is NASCAR. And what I like about Thunder Alley is you have a whole bunch of different cars. These cars are zooming around the track. And again, in this game's all about drafting. You play cards, you move a car, but all the cars behind you might move, or all the cars in front of you might move. So you're trying to get your cars to move as often as possible, working together and kind of just leeching off what other people do. A really fantastic game. Then we have, where are we now? We just did it. I lost my place here. There we go. D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, Castle Ravenloft, which also includes Wrath of Ashardlin. They just came out with, there's so many of these different versions of the game. Temple of Elemental Evil, Tomb of Annihilation, Legend of Drizzt, and they all work together. The Tomb of Annihilation is the latest one to come out, and I really just like the system. It's not really so much a dungeon crawl per se, as it is a cooperative game, but with cool, now the newest one, you can buy a set with painted miniatures, but you just go through, you can make it a campaign, but it also works well as just a one-off game where you go through and you see what monsters show up, and as you mix it together, you're never quite sure. 155 has been on my list since I've started, and that is For Sale, a very simple, quick card auctioning game where you're flipping over cards that are different dwellings. You bid on these dwellings, a simple auction. You get these dwellings and you use these dwellings in another auction, a blind auction where you flip them over and the highest number will win a check from $0 to $15,000. Very simple, easy game to play, goes up to 6. This is one of those games that if I'm not sure what else to bring out, I can do this. Number 154 is Mogul, which was just reprinted a bit ago from Rio Grande Games. This game is an auction game which takes the idea of no thanks and expands upon it. In Mogul, there's different shares, and if you want a share, you have to throw a chip in to stay in the bidding. If you can't or don't want to stay in the bidding, you take all the chips that are on top of the share, and then you're out. We keep going to one person's left. Shares are useful. That's how you get points. But you need chips to be able to win future shares. So it's the newest version added a board, which also added some more options. Great game, Mogul. 153 is Magic the Gathering. Now, this will astound people in different ways. For Magic the Gathering players, they're like, there's 152 games better? I don't think so. And for other people, you're like, how can you put such a game on your list? Because at its core, Magic the Gathering is a fun game. I'm not so convinced sometimes there's a lot of luck in the deck building, and there's definitely a meta game in the tournaments that I'm not as interested in. But the Commander version of the game, where you have a 100-card deck and every card has to be different, I love that. It makes the game a lot more fun to play against somebody else in Magic the Gathering. Number 152 is an abstract strategy game, The Duke. The Duke is a takeoff of chess, where you have the Duke as your king and you got to capture the other person's Duke. However, in the Duke, each piece moves differently, and it shows you on the piece how it moves, and then after it moves, it flips over to being a different kind of piece. And both sides have the same pieces, unless you play with some of the asymmetrical expansions, which are fun. And you're pulling them from a bag, so there's a tiny bit of luck in what pieces you get from the bag. But other than that, it's pure strategy, and I love the fact that each piece tells you how it moves. 151 is a new game to the list. That's Manhattan Project Energy Empire. Now, I like Manhattan Project, but Manhattan Project Energy Empire, the idea of using these dice, getting these custom dice for you that provide you with energy, and then you're polluting the atmosphere and you have to kind of work and not have too much pollution, or maybe you have a lot of pollution, just hope you get points in other ways. It's a really simple game. It actually has nothing to do really with Manhattan Project, other than I guess there's nuclear energy in one, and the other one you're making nuclear bombs, but whatever. It's a great game, and it really hasn't got a lot of positive buzz, a lot of buzz at all, really. I guess you definitely should check it out. Number 150 for me is Wits and Wagers. Now, as a board game, it is a very, very fun party game. As a game show game, it's astounding. So this 150 falls in the middle of those. It's a lot of fun. Asking trivia questions and answering them. You have no idea what the answer is probably, and you're betting on who you think probably knows the best. A good concept. Number 149 is another new one to the list. This is Lorenzo Il Magnifico, and I wonder if this one might move up more. This is a Euro-style game from some of my favorite designers in the business, and in this game you roll some dice, and those dice show how much each of your workers is worth, putting these workers in different spots, building like a machine that you then run and get resources. Really fun game, Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Number 148 is Dead of Winter. Now, Dead of Winter is a longer game with traders and such, and I don't play these games as much these days, but you cannot deny that this is a great experience. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of the Walking Dead type thing, where the greatest enemy is yourself. And that's what this game is, but it's so much fun. There's so many variations. The game has a very clever way of making people act like traders, even when they're not, and I like it, Dead of Winter. 147 is new to the list, and that is Role Player. Role Player is a game that just keeps growing on me. It's a game where you roll dice and then place these dice in your stats, trying to get the best stats that you can so that you can go out. It's basically you're building a character before you go out into a D&D universe. But the idea of rolling these dice and placing them in the right slots just really works well. I'm really looking forward to the expansion coming out for Role Player. 146 is also new to the list. That's Islebound. Islebound is a game from Ryan Lockett, which is, I don't know that there's a lot of unique things to it, but there's a lot of really good things. There's an idea of taking action, put a coin in a pool, or take all the coins in that pools, or go over here and the different cities on the board provide different actions, or get upgrades and then do things. Oh, the whole thing just comes together. It is a really smooth, excellent game, Islebound. 1989 is my 145. This was really high on my list at one point, tied with Twilight Struggle. As time has gone by, I prefer the whole Cold War theme that Twilight Struggle has to the very focused 1989 has on a single year and the fall of different countries leaving communism and starting their own democracies. But it still is really good, has a nice card combat system, teaches you a lot about what happened in 1989, a fantastic historical game from not from Twilight Struggle, from GMT Games. 144 is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. This is a game in which one person is a murderer and other people are trying to figure out who the murderer is. The forensic scientist knows, but he can't talk. He can only give clues. If you've never played this game, you've got to give it a try. It really works well with large groups. It is a lot of fun, and it's interesting to see how you can communicate without words. Then 143 is Star Trek Fleet Captains. Even though I don't play this game much these days, it definitely is a game that takes Star Trek as a whole and puts it in a box. This game is you know, it's like a whole season of Star Trek as you go through and you fly your ships around and you're trying to, if you're the Klingons, of course, you're at war, Federation doing peaceful things. You run into tribbles, you run into all sorts of things that happen over the course of this game with all the different characters. Has a bit of deck shuffling in it. The components could have been better for sure, but it still provides you that authentic Star Trek experience. 142 is Core Worlds. Core Worlds is a deck building game, which really feels like it's based on Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, in which you are slowly building up your own little empire and bringing in other planets to your empire. And the game has a very clear technology shift as it goes by. A lot of fun, especially with the expansions, Core Worlds. And last one for today is Millennium Blades. This one was 106 last year, so pretty close to the list. Millennium Blades is a game about a collectible card game, which sounds like it should not work at all, but it really does. In this game, you are taking different cards and building your deck. So you're opening packs of cards. I don't need this. I don't want this. Trading with other players, putting cards in the middle, selling cards, buying cards. And then you play the collectible card game at some point in the game, which is okay. But the game around it, the meta game around it, is just an amazing, cool economic game. And that is Millennium Blades. All right, we got 40 more games before we get to the top 100. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Next Best Games on the Dice Tower.